Hello everyone, it's Roger from There Be Giants and welcome back to another episode of Giant Talk. And I'm particularly excited about today because we're getting the chance to spend some time with a gentleman from an organisation which I've been a huge fan of. I feel like a bit of a groupie today. A huge fan of for many years, they focus on nothing but values and culture, and that is often, as many of you will know, what undermines the majority of change initiatives out there in organisations. So I would like to introduce you all to Tom Rausch, who is Director of Consulting for the Barrett Value Centre. Tom, welcome to Giant Talk.
Thank you, Roger. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you too. So, without further ado, maybe if you could start off by just sharing with the listeners a bit about you, a bit about what you do now, what you've done before, and then maybe a bit about BBC itself.
Sure. Happy to do that. Well, my roots go back to a master's program in adult continuing education. Back when I was doing that in the early 80s, that was an unusual thing for adults to continue learning. And that took me into the corporate world of learning and development. I ended up focusing on development of sales executives. And after a few years of doing that, I left that to become an entrepreneur and grew a tech business with my wife, Kathy, and we made children's CD-ROMs, and we morphed into an internet company. Yeah,
CD-ROMs, that puts a date on it.
Yeah, and they were called talking books back then, and then something called the World Wide Web came out, and we were well positioned to ride that wave, and built up that company to about 30 employees, and then I sold that to a marketing firm, an advertising firm. And that then allowed me to return to my first love, which is, helping adults grow and thrive, and particularly in business, because I feel that business needs to be an agent of world benefit. I feel the world is going through, huge change right now. And I'm doing everything I can to impact that in a positive way, because I think business is a key lever to get that done. And when I was able to return to that, it was about 2008. That's when I discovered Barrett's and Barrett's culture assessments. When I got back into the business of being a consultant to organizations for leadership and culture, I needed to get some certification. So I looked at all of the tools available for leadership development and culture measurement. And I really fell in love with the Barrett tools. Like you, I was a fanboy back then because the Barrett model is a universal mirror and map of how all human beings and all human systems grow and evolve. And if you understand how a healthy human being or a healthy human system grows and evolves, that is a beautiful pattern on which to look at yourself, look at your organization, and decide, what's our next level? What's holding us back? What's our next level for moving forward? And Barrett has always had the mission of transforming business, of making business an agent of world benefit. And when they called me a couple of years ago and asked me to come on as director of consulting and help them reinvigorate this original mission of truly transforming business to a new business paradigm, I was all in. And that's really the work I love doing right now and am focused on.
That's really interesting. So you say refocus on organizations, because I know Barrett works with not just businesses, but organizations of many different shapes and sizes. Sure. In fact, you might even say works with some countries as well, because you work with governments, don't you?
That's right. We work with government agencies. We do national assessments. Personally, though, in the consulting arm where I focus on working with the very largest consulting companies across the globe and the very largest brand names across the globe. That was what I was doing in private business. So that's kind of my natural area of interest and expertise, because, if you help an organization of 250,000 employees or 500,000 employees transform, that you get that cascading impact.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Okay. So, from the tools that you have, obviously you use those each time there's an engagement, and it's not just obviously the work that you do directly yourselves as the value center. You've also got, like myself, a whole network of trained consultants across the globe using your tools as well. So you must sit on an absolute goldmine of data around culture and organizational culture and such like.
We do, yeah. We've been collecting data. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We've been at this for 25 years, and we always keep a fresh database of the last 10 years of data so that we can look at trends and how things have been changing. Because as your viewers, your listeners may not know, we do collect values data. We ask people questions like, what values are most important to you? And they get a list of 100 values and they select the top 10. Then we ask them, what values do you see going on when you go to work on Monday morning in your culture? And that gives us another shot of how are they experiencing that at work? And then the third question is really the gold question for people trying to make improvements to their culture and their leadership style and their well-being of their employees. And that's what values will take us to the next level. So yeah, we have all that data. And I was just recently reviewing all of that because we did a workplace evolution study when COVID hit to see, the dramatic change that we've been through in the past 2-3 years since the pandemic. And it is kind of fascinating what's happened.
So I'm assuming that you probably, I wouldn't be surprised if you have these on a screen on the wall somewhere that shows it changing dynamically. But do you keep the current top 10 that people are saying are the most important to them? Do you keep those, front and center in terms of your data that you're tracking?
That's it. It is interesting. We watch that internally. One of the things that's a little different about Barrett is we don't prescribe. There's no such thing as the best top 10, but we do look at what the trends are and what's going on. And the big themes, I was reviewing the top 10 in preparation for our talk today. And I would say the themes, there's a couple of themes that really jump out and these have changed a little bit since the pandemic. One big theme is care about me, truly care about me as an employee and understand who I am. Another one is give me work with meaning, right? Give me work where I can feel fulfillment. Employee fulfillment has jumped into the top 10. It was never in the top 10 consistently.
That's really interesting.
In years past. Yeah.
Yeah. And, looking at this, we are an OKR podcast, of course. So looking at this through an OKR lens, a lot of organizations choose to use OKRs or something like OKRs because they start to appreciate that alignment is really important to try and instill that sense of purpose and that sense of meaning. Mm-hmm. In large organizations where you've got a lot of people, it's very easy. I remember myself when I worked in an organization of 15,000 people, I very much saw part of my responsibility as being enabling my team and all those that worked for me to understand just how important their contribution was, because they were so far removed from the final impact or the end product. And so that, the larger the organization becomes, the more of a challenge it is to give that meaning, isn't it?
So you really hit it on the head there. I think, particularly in large organizations where you are far removed, perhaps from seeing the end results of your work, that is crucially important.
Yeah. So, like I said, using the process of alignment is something which we've seen takes. It doesn't happen at the snap of a finger or overnight, for that matter. It takes time from, the initial discussion to actually then agreeing what needs to be done to then actually working on what needs to be done. That whole process, and yet we still come across leaders nowadays who think that they can write a whole cascade of objectives that then just get pushed down the business, and they say, right, everything's aligned.
Right. Right. And that's another key aspect I think you're hitting on. And the Barrett values model is evolutionary. It's 7 levels of consciousness and how we approach business. The foundational 3 levels of how do we survive, how do we have good relationships, customer relationships, how do we become efficient, that's traditional scientific management. And that's been passed down to us from the military, the churches, everything that's been organized hierarchical. And that's really what, most business schools taught over the last 100 years. So it's no surprise that many leaders think that they can command and control their way to success. But that's the big shift that's been happening. And it's been going on for years. When I first got into this 15 years ago, I could see the global companies were making this shift from traditional scientific management to also embrace leadership, from telling people what to do to also coaching them and developing them. And I think as a practitioner of the OKR approach, you understand the value of leaving some of the how to the employees, of coaching them to say, this is the end result we want.
Oh, completely.
But you solve your problem. And that's leadership.
Completely. And that goes right down to the core of how to the detail of how you write your key results.
That's right.
Because if you write them as we want, do X by Y, that's an instruction in many ways.
Right.
If it's written just as this is what we want to achieve, and actually we're going to leave it open for all those that could possibly align into that to work out the solution for it, because you know what, you're closer to the solutions than we are.
That's exactly it.
We recruited you in the first place because of your skills and your knowledge and your expertise.
Right.
So we trust you to put those to work.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So empower me to do that. Give me the direction. Give me clarity. That's absolutely needed. But then empower me and trust me, and show me you trust me by leaving it up to me. And that then leads when you adopt a coaching style, which is what I would call that, a coaching style rather than a telling style. That can then lead to all of the other good things that can open up. Because if I am coaching you around your performance, right, performance coaching to achieve your goals, your OKRs, I can also coach you to think about your career and think about your own development and think about how does the work you do bring meaning to your life? How can you create work-life, if not work-life balance, at least work-life harmony or work-life integration, where the work you do does have meaning. There's also, the bigger context of, and this is another shift that's become more and more important as people wake up to the importance of sustainability. And some of the higher level values is people want to work for companies they can be proud of.
Yes.
Consumers want to buy from companies who they feel are doing, not just best in the world at what they do and offering a great product or service at a great price, but also best for the world. So that at least they're not doing harm to the world, and maybe they're giving back. And those kind of conversations are coaching conversations. And, they don't typically happen in a command and control environment, but they really open up in a servant leadership environment where the leader recognizes, I'm here to develop my people. And guess what? They want to be developed. And that's how you tap into their engagement. That's how you tap into their extra effort. But it's also how you help them find fulfillment. And if you can help employees find fulfillment now, you're going to be winning the talent wars of trying to attract and retain the best.
Yes, and I make no apologies for banging on about it, because I see this all the time when OKRs are used really well. It's not just as you say, the sort of inherent coaching approach that they encourage. It's also because there's a complete transparency around results.
Yes.
And achievement is a big part of fulfillment as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. People, there's a tendency when we say, oh, coaching rather than telling, like we're saying, oh, you only coach and you care about people. You don't hold them responsible to the results. Well, yes, you do. Right.
Yes.
So it's a combination of both, right? It's giving absolute clarity, communicating when things seems to be going off base, having that honest feedback, creating, a learning environment where we're all learning together and we're all catching ourselves if we're going, making mistakes or going off track, admitting it to each other, and writing it, right? As a team. Yeah.
And that leads me to something which we find from a cultural perspective is absolutely crucial to OKRs being successful for an organization, and that's around psychological safety.
Yes.
So you mentioned there about people being safe enough to be open and have those candid conversations. The true value in OKRs is not about it doesn't matter whether you have the most beautifully written and perfect set of OKRs in the world. If you're not having regular conversations around them, they're not doing anything for you. So I'm just wondering, from a culture and a values point of view, are you seeing anything in the data that's telling you that psychological safety is thriving out there, or is it lacking out there?
It might not surprise you to say both. So one of the interesting things we did when COVID hit, we thought, let's do a global survey and let's reach out to people and say, so we did a special survey of, remember back to 3 months ago, what were the values you were experiencing and what are you experiencing now? Right. And so we were able to get a snapshot at that time of pre-COVID. And then, it was May of 2020, right in the height of the uncertainty, right? Everything kind of shut down in March and we're getting measurements in May. And the organizations that had made the shift, it was remarkable. What we saw was what would normally take maybe 3, 4, 5 years of conscious transformation if we were trying to create psychological safety, right? We were trying to put that into our system, would normally take time for training and adapting and people showing up in new ways. Happened almost overnight because we were forced to. We were forced into trust because we all had to start working from home, or a great amount of us, or even if we were deemed, essential and we were showing up and doing construction. I was doing some consulting work with a construction company at the time, and the caring that happened, right? The concern for health that happened, turned on immediately, except for those that it didn't, right? So for the approximately 60% of our respondent and, our survey we did got that and made that huge transformation. The ones that stayed in fear, right? And basically one definition of psychological safety is how much fear is in the system. And if you stayed fearful and you as a leader or as a leadership team, couldn't offer the caring, the vulnerability, the we're in this together, then that was negatively impacted. But the ones who got it saw a huge rise in employee engagement and appreciation for trust in leadership.
Yeah, and that's it's interesting that was kind of like the jolt. It was the accelerator for it, wasn't it? As a business leader myself, I can very much relate to what you were saying. The data told you was happening at that point, and because I felt that my urge was to make sure that my team felt safe and were looked after and cared for. Because, coming back to the structure of the model, the Barrett model, you have basic needs that sit at level 1. And if they're not being attended to, then all bets are off.
That's exactly right. And the smart leaders figured that out. Is like, so Barrett says we operate at 7 levels of need, of human need: the basic survival, the relationship, the self-esteem, getting things done, and then up into authenticity, teamwork, collaboration, the upper levels. And what happened when COVID hit was every single one of us started paying attention to the level 1 and level 2 needs, right? All of a sudden, health and safety and family at level 2 became more and more important. And the organizations that not only respected that, but celebrated it and made it a key part of the way we're going to get through this together, they're the ones who continue to thrive and who made it through COVID relatively well. And of course, we know some didn't.
So I'm curious to see how much of this has stuck, so to speak, since the shift, or whether we've kind of reverted back. In terms of again creating that right environment, that right culture for OKRs to work well. A lot of organisations want to use them for innovation. And that requires a degree of controlled risk taking, learning, the chance of some moderate failure perhaps happening, and being able to work with that and bounce back from it.
Yes.
Are you seeing anything in the data now that's telling you that perhaps that shift that took place over COVID has stayed in place, and therefore we're maybe seeing more innovation now as a result of that? Are you seeing anything around that?
Yeah, we are. We've seen a general shift up into the innovation and the things you're talking about there: continual learning, learning from mistakes, being vulnerable. Those all exist at levels like 4 and 5, and we've seen this shift up from just being the best in the world, which is level 3. I want to be great at what I do. And those foundational things are important, obviously, with business. But now there's been a recognition for the ones that are doing well that, no, we also have to allow for mistakes. We have to, as a leader, admit our own mistakes and be a little vulnerable and, lead by example, showing, hey, I make mistakes too. And that kind of transparency is what encourages and makes psychological safety stick. Because if you've been in a place where it hasn't been safe to tell the truth, or it hasn't been safe to point out errors and problems, that takes a while to get over. And what it takes to get over is leadership by example. And I think, in the news, we typically see the stories of the opposite. We see the stories of the organizations that are not moving towards psychological safety, but in some ways are reverting and trying to regain the old command and control. So there is definitely that going on. But the great places to work, the people who continue to understand that a wholly human way of doing business is what's important. And I think that's an important takeaway I'd like the listeners to understand, is that the Barrett model looks at the whole human being, the 7 levels. Yes, we need survival, we need family, we need self-esteem and doing well, but we also need teamwork. We need to feel part of a community. We need to feel belonging. We need to feel our work has meaning. And that is that those full spectrum human needs need to be paid attention to. And one other thing I'd throw at you is one of the things we encourage our clients to do when they engage with our model and our services is consider KPIs and OKRs at all 7 levels.
Yeah.
So don't just set goals, at financial performance. Set goals at other levels, giving back to society, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, Tom. And I'm seeing more and more initiatives like B Corp, for instance, be widely embraced. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point in the not too distant future where B Corp becomes a requirement for pitching for, being invited to tender for various different contracts. Maybe even government contracts.
Yeah, that's true. We also see it in the finances. Is that organizations that don't have goals around sustainability and both societal and environmental aren't going to be able to get money And there's currently pressure from consumers and other stakeholders in that, but it's going to get to the point, I believe, where only those people who take in full spectrum are going to be able to operate in
which
the future.
Which requires some very enlightened leadership, doesn't it?
Exactly, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we call it, we look at 4 areas of alignment. We look at 4 journeys of alignment and integration. You know us, and most people know us as a culture company, right? And certainly aligning your culture with your strategy is important. But we also know most business leaders are focused on the business journey. They're focused on KPIs, metrics. They're focused on processes for improvement. Their focus is on the external results, and that's great and important. And the culture, properly aligned and integrated, will support that or not, right? If it's not aligned, you won't get that. But you also have to be aligning your career path for all of your employees, because everybody wants to be developed. Everybody, all good talent wants to work at a place where they're recognized, where they're valued, where they're cared for, and where they're developed. And that's the career journey that the HR people and chief people officers need to worry about. But there's the most important, and what I would consider the cornerstone, is the personal journey of enlightened leadership, the personal journey of looking at your own strengths and weaknesses. We all have a learning edge. We all have blind spots. And 360 feedback and developing myself as a leader and developing my leadership team, that is actually the cornerstone. And then when you're doing that, then it can all come together. And in some ways, it's the hardest thing. Everybody knows how to look at the strategy and the KPIs, and most people are starting to get, this is how we develop people, and people are waking up to culture. But that importance of every leader and every person in the organization being encouraged to look at their own psychological, social, emotional development, so that we can all, because the world is not getting easier, right?
No, it isn't.
The volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, the ambiguity, we all need to be working on ourselves so that we can be the type of leader who people can look to and count on, that we're not going to revert to fear-based behaviors out of our own triggers.
Yeah, which, when we're faced with threats to our own health and well-being, can be very easy to do. I mean, the thing I've always loved about the Value Center and the tools that you have is that you have managed to make the intangible tangible. That thing that we can all feel but can't actually touch.
That's right. Because you don't see it.
No, you don't. Exactly. And you get a lot of senior executives who are still, need a fair amount of convincing as to, why this should be focused on and invested in. And I don't worry, I'm not going to pinpoint you with a specific question on this, but I've looked up a piece from an article that Richard wrote about 10 years ago, actually, when he was looking at the impact of the last recession. Okay.
2008,
yeah. And then looking at the shareholder, the performance of share prices in the S&P 500, he saw that for organizations that were making a significant investment in managing their culture, that they had a higher rate of return and also recovered faster from they recovered within a year back to their pre-meltdown share value. Whereas those that weren't considered to be people focused, took 3 years. So it's in terms of what's the ROI on these types of things, I think there's a really compelling piece of work that he did there, which is a really interesting one.
Yeah, that was a great piece of work done, and it's interesting. I'm looking at a graph right now because I'm giving a talk next week on culture, and 2008, where we did the little downturn, the impact of the difference of the companies who make these lists, whether it's, I'm looking at a chart of the 100 best companies to work for, happens to be, which is a FTSE Russell kind of thing. There's the 100 best, the Russell 1000, and the Russell 3000. And from 2008 to 2021 here, the top producers who are the best to work for are outperforming by a factor of 3.3 to those who didn't make that list. The very top is 2,300% better.
Wow.
And the worst is 691% better of those differences. So the organizations that have continued to embrace the whole human caring, because that's who gets voted the best companies to work for, the employees who say these people are great. It continues to be. And that's why I have ultimate faith that those are the organizations that are going to win out, because they're winning. Right. So caring for people is one of the best ways to increase profits. Yeah,
100%. Listen, so I think we're approaching the end of our conversation. So I'd like to ask at the end if our guests can offer just one takeaway to our listeners to ensure that they could kind of build on what they've heard today. And so in terms of, let's kind of frame this as if someone listening to us today wanted to build the best possible culture for OKRs and obviously people to thrive in, what's the one takeaway you would offer?
Well, I already alluded to it earlier. I think it's lead by example. Be on your own journey of evolution and growth. We all have that learning edge. We all have those blind spots and triggers. Work on your own issues. It's what I do. Because when I show up as a role model, I show up as the best person I can be. I show up being able to process my triggers very quickly and not press them out onto other people. When I show up as authentic and vulnerable, that's the type of boss you want to work for. And I would challenge everybody else to think about this. I mean, now we know the neuroscience behind this. We know all of the reasons that this works in business, but intuitive leaders have always known this, right? The very best leaders that I've worked with over the years never read a management book, but they just showed up as servant leaders. They just knew that taking care of their people and being honest and vulnerable and admitting your mistakes is the way to go. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. And if any of our listeners would like to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best way is just email me at tom@valuecenter.com, and that center is spelled the European way with CENTRE.com. I also have a pretty big LinkedIn profile and post pretty regularly on there. So if you go to LinkedIn/in and then /Tom Rausch, TOMRAUSCH, you can hook up with me on LinkedIn too.
Brilliant. Well, on behalf of all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed the chat. It's always good to talk to a fellow BDCer. We look forward to perhaps maybe welcoming you back on again at some point in the future.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled, Roger. I think the work you're doing with OKRs is really quite brilliant, and I look forward to figuring out ways that we can help promote your work as well as our approach to make the world a better place.
Really appreciate it. Thanks very much, Tom.
All right, take care.